Hey everyone, John here. Come here. Yeah, come here. Do you think you're the first one? Do you think you're the first person to tell me that the amiibo on that shelf behind me have fallen over? I know. It's been that way for months. Every video I've done, I have not picked those guys up. Because I get comments saying, hey, man, your amiibo have fallen over, pick them up. And I simply refuse. So the more you tell me, the more I won't. The longer you prolong this experiment, the longer Daruk is going to be facing concrete. Okay? Okay? And today we're talking about the launch of the Nintendo 3DS. And it's very easy to look back at that launch lineup and say, that system didn't have a whole lot going on. I mean, it was basically Pilot Wings Resort, Nintendogs Plus Cats, which technically is not one game, but a few games, and then stuff like Rayman 3D, Ridge Racer 3D, Ghost Recon, and Street Fighter 4 3D Edition, one of my favorites of the entire bunch. It's like there was stuff to play, but it didn't have a heavy hitter that would justify the entire system. There wasn't a Mario, or a Zelda, or a Ice Climber. There's not that big Nintendo caliber game. But I do think it's a bit of revisionism to say that the system wasn't impressive at launch, because it was mighty impressive. Compared to the DS, the graphical jump was huge. We had games like Pilot Wings Resort giving us Woohoo Island, which was still present with the Wii. The Wii U wasn't out yet, so you had the modern Nintendo Island hub just in the palm of your hands. Street Fighter 4 was the current Street Fighter. That was portable, fully featured. That was incredible. But it wasn't just about the games. The capability of the hardware was also a massive jump over anything we'd really seen before. And do you guys remember what was packed in with the console? It was these little things. AR cards. So on the 3DS menu, there's that little question mark box. And you may not have used it in years, but that basically allowed you to play augmented reality on the 3DS using its cameras. And like back then, AR was still in the birthing stage. It was quite rudimentary. There were some like phones with AR functions, but things like Snapchat hadn't really taken off at that point. And so we really needed, for clear and concise AR, points of reference, markers, like these cards over here. And honestly, this app was absolutely awesome. So let's start by going through everything in the Nintendo AR Card Games app. So this one right here is the main character of this app. You put it down and a little guy walks off, and you can then shoot him and activate different kinds of games. And there's only two available at first. There's the Target one and the Star one. So let's begin with Star, because that one has all these other cards involved too. And at least back in the launch day, this was showing you franchises that weren't on the 3DS. So we didn't have a Zelda game, we didn't have any of these, a Mario game, a Pikmin game, a Kirby game, a Metroid game. So it let you see what those models would look like on the 3DS, and it was basically Wii quality. It was crazy just moving these things around, changing their positions and their animations, and just making these cool little pictures, like just posing your favorite characters the way you want them to be, and seeing them in the real world. Like that sounds kind of, tame now, but Mario could have been on my copy of Spider-Man 2 for UMD, and that would have given me entertainment for hours, if not weeks. There wasn't really a whole lot you could do with these, but just posing them around and making cool little pictures was neat. And it was kind of the predecessor to Miitomo, the mobile app, because that had a very similar thing where you put your Miis in the real world. And without this, I'm not entirely sure that Pokemon's augmented reality, in which I mean Pokemon Go's augmented reality, would have shined the same way it did. It definitely doesn't do a whole lot, but what it led to in terms of technology, or what it popularized, in fact, just really went the extra mile. But yeah, these cards didn't do a whole lot, so what about this one again? I actually love this card right here, because it gave you so many possibilities. So we're starting with Target, AR Target. This was a pretty cool game. You just sort of move your system around and hit targets. This does get a bit more interesting, as we'll talk about soon. But at least this first endeavor into AR Target, it's just kind of, it's easy, but it's cool seeing that the whole world expand around you and getting these little sets like on your table. It's just cool. And it ends with a face-off against an actual dragon. I don't think the dragon can actually hurt you. It tries its best to, but I'm pretty sure it can't. It just sort of snaps at you, goes, ah, but nothing actually happens. That's a common trend with these dragon encounters. But anyway, after doing those two, we get AR Shot, which is basically pool. It's like pool mixed with golf, and it's a very similar thing. You get these sets in the real world, but these ones morph the environment, so your table can go in or out, which is just very neat. I think this is a cooler one than AR Target, at least the first one. But yeah, this is just another really neat one. You get a few little holes of your little pool golf, and it's neat. And it ends with a face-off against a flippin' dragon. So you've got to just hit the balls back at him in a kind of similar way. I don't know what it is with dragons. But there's also graffiti. You just draw like a 2D image on the bottom screen, and it appears in the real world. You can like move the camera around and see the sides of a 2D image. It's kind of neat. There's like some Mario Paint tools, like the rocket in there. Also kind of neat. It's kind of a legacy, like Mario Paint, Mario Maker, AR cards. What a legacy. But there's more stuff we unlocked, like the Mii Poser. This is just the same thing as the other AR cards like Mario and Samus and Kirby. Apart from it's your Mii. You can give them a few more poses. Nothing really to say about this one. But I have a lot to say, though, about fishing, AR fishing. This turns your surface into a pond, and you can fish for lots of different kinds of fish. There's a lot of cool Easter eggs, which we'll cover in a little bit. But this is generally just a nice, cool one. It cheats a little bit, though, because I find keeping track of this little card can get a bit tricky in some games, because you have to keep the entire card frame within the camera view, and if you're trying to like look for targets getting in close, you might lose the whole thing. And so when you're like reeling in with the 3DS, you actually have to like pull the system up, which means you're probably going to lose track of this card. But it's still like, it cheats a bit by keeping it in frame. I think like it just maintains the last frame or something, and I don't know. But yeah, it's cool just finding these little different fish. Anything's better with fishing, and that was a pre-installed thing with the 3DS. Like the 3DS itself has fishing as a minigame. How rad is that? But let's talk a bit about some of the unlockable stuff. The store, which has even more games that you can buy using play coins. And let's just go through some of these. So one thing you can buy is the world globe. You can put the globe onto your AR card, move it around, hold the world in the palm of your hands. It might mostly just sort of look at it and rotate it. Like you can't see country names. You can zoom in and see the countries, but it's quite it's not a very detailed globe. But one thing you can do is like if you shoot it, you'll recognize that it slowly gets redder and redder the more you shoot it, and eventually you just destroy the world. There's like the most chilling music there. What have I done? But it's okay, because we can buy another Earth. On another not really interesting note is clock. Like the 3DS has a clock, but this one's like a more detailed clock. There's a cuckoo come out. And like if you like get close to it when it comes out, just flipping attacks you. Then there's 3D Tools, which gives you the distortion effects from AR Shot and allows you just to mess with them. There's no objective to this. You can just sort of make like the real world have holes or hills. You can put balls on them, but like you can't do anything with the balls. It's kind of neat. Anyway, the most exciting part about this shop is sequels to the existing games. There's sequels to Fishing, sequels to Shot, and sequels to Target. And these are so much more in-depth than the prior versions. Like, Target is actually extremely hard now. It's very difficult to find exactly where each target is, and you'll be looming, like, into the card itself to try and get different angles that you can't see immediately. Like, it's just neat. Like, this is just a more fleshed-out version showing what it could have been. And, like, honestly, I think these are some of my favorite AR games even today. Like, they're just very, very cool. AR Shot in particular is way harder than the previous one. You could basically do everything in the first one with just a hole-in-one, Whereas this one, you actually have to think. Like, think about strategic planning, about following the morphing environment, about waiting for your time, and it's difficult, but it's very, very cool. Of course, these both end in dragon fights, as they do. In fact, the fishing ended in a... I forgot to say, the fishing ends in a dragon fight too. Yeah, fishing has a boss fight. Go on. Fish him up. And the sequel to fishing is free fishing. So the prior one was basically just catching a few fish and then catching a dragon. Whereas this one, you can just go for as long as you want, catching different kinds of fish. And the kinds of fish that are there change depending on the weather. So if it's summery, if it's nighttime, different fish appear. If it's snowing, different fish appear. And like if you put down like a red surface, you can catch like sheep. Put down a yellow surface, you can catch this guy. There's a ton of cool Easter eggs just packed into free fishing, and trying to find every fish is just neat. Like, as I said earlier, fishing minigame always wins. And what other system has a fishing minigame? Like, games have fishing minigames, but consoles? That's why 3DS is always winning, baby. And then the last one is just fishing again. It's just the gallery for fishing. Like, just seeing what fish you've caught. Yeah. Doesn't really count, but that is AR card games on the 3DS. Now, AR was a thing that continued with the lifespan, but not that many games used it. We're talking stuff like Spirit Camera, which use your 3DS cameras to put ghosts in the real world. But in terms of the cards, you had like Kid Icarus Uprising, which had a whole set of booster packs you can get, and like collecting all the cards was just a thing you could do. Not much really happened with them. Like, you can make them fight, you can unlock them to get 100% completion in your gallery and all of that. But we're talking about pre-installed stuff. Although I will say, more character cards appeared too. Like, the Mario line of AR cards happened, and it really is the same as the ones that come with the system, just a bit more in-depth and a lot more Mario-y. But yeah, what about other stuff the 3DS could do without buying a single other game? Well, we had Face Raiders. Face Raiders allowed you to take a picture of yourself or your friends. I haven't got any friends in here right now, so I took pictures of like just things I had around me. Face Raiders is another style of AR, but without the reference point of the card. It's kind of like playing motion control pointing games without a sensor bar. So sometimes things drift around and they don't stay exactly where they should be. So a big part of this game is the faces will like break out of reality and shatter within the real world. So like you see like in your room, there's just darkness in the walls. Apart from the darkness likes to move around with you and not really be in the walls. It just kind of looks like everything's disjointed, and this one's it's fun socially. It's fun to like take a picture of your friend's face and then shoot them. And it's cool that the home icon changes too depending on what faces you have. Like that's always neat. But this one's a lot more of a novelty, and it's also surprisingly easy. Although I will say the final level, the final boss, that one actually does have some challenge. And I wish that there was like a sequel to Face Raiders that kind of just builds upon that, like how the AR card game sequels, AR Shot 2 and Target 2, built upon their mechanics. But yeah, Face Raiders doesn't really find its full potential, but it's still neat. And like today, this is definitely the style of AR that we have. We don't have cards as reference points. We move our cameras around. We catch Pokemon in the real world. We put things on people's faces. It's exactly what we have today. So it's neat seeing kind of where this all originated from, or became popular at least. And I feel like I should mention this one too. Nintendo 3DS sound. There's got to be someone out there whose most played 3DS game or app is this one. It's a funny one because it launched in an era where smartphones were like the dominant MP3 player. Like, not that many people were carrying around like dedicated iPods and things like that. Like with the PSP, like when that thing came out, it was impressive that was an MP3 player. The 3DS, maybe not quite so much, but there were still cool things in here. Like you could record your voice and then distort it to add effects to it. And like it's actually quite powerful in that regard. There's a lot of versatility in what you can do with your voice. Also, if you speak on the menu to these frickin' birds, they just repeat what you say. Got him. But my favorite part of 3DS sound is the visualizers. Like this is a lost art. Everything should have visualizers, but for some reason, we now kind of listen to music or watch the display of music in just silence. But this was an evolution of what the DSi had. But they make them more interactive this time. So there's a Star Fox looking one where you can shoot things. There's a Game & Watch mini game, like a full-fledged one. Like if you use the circle pad, you can move in whatever axis you want. The X-axis, the Y-axis. This is just a full-on Game & Watch game buried in your sound, and like you can just play games while jamming out to your music. It's very like Vibribony in that regard, like making music interactive, and I love that. And like another really cool one is there's an Excitebike one, and there's a chance, like it doesn't always happen, but when the song ends, like one of the racers usually wins, but there's a chance that Doc Lewis from Punch-Out just shows up and wins. I think that's awesome. That's just so freaking cool. But yeah, this is like the last music visualizer with a lot of personality on a console, and I think it's awesome. 3DS sound. So we've talked in the past about how the Nintendo DS had Miis. Like there were like 5 games that included them, and some of them had a Mii Maker built into the software itself. But the system, on an OS level, didn't have a Mii Maker. Like, Miis weren't a universal thing that you could just take from game to game. And it's easy to take for granted, but having a Mii Maker on a handheld was so rad. I remember taking that thing to college and showing people, like, I was like sitting around with a group of friends and just sort of making them while they sat next to me. Like, with the Wii, it was like a family thing, but with the 3DS, it could become more of like a friend group thing. Everyone just sitting around making Miis, taking pictures of themselves and shaking it, and the Mii not really looking like them, then be like, do I actually look like that? It's like, well, how do we tell them? I thought it was rad as flip, and the Miis had a lot of utility on 3DS, because it wasn't just like an avatar for games, it was you. Like, the Mii you make on your system is you. And that is what you send to other people via another pre-installed app, being the StreetPass Plaza. So this was just so damn cool, and it is still so damn cool. You take your 3DS around with you, and if someone else has registered a Mii on that system, you trade Miis. It's like, it makes the world feel smaller. It's not that common that you just find someone else with a 3DS, especially just out there in the real world. But just like knowing that there are more people like you, more people with the same the same problems as you, walking around with a 3DS, knowing that they're out there is rad, and how you can like take them into games. And like, not that many launch games featured StreetPass, but in terms of pre-installed software, we had the most iconic ones of the bunch, being StreetPass Puzzle Swap and StreetPass Quest, which is called Find Me in America. My favorite was always Puzzle Swap. I thought it was like just bringing everybody together, trading pieces, trying to make a complete whole. And like once you finish a piece, you get a whole 3D diorama, which is like a big tech demo. In fact, these were tech demos. I remember on the E3 show floor, there were like a whole like 3D reels on the system where I was like, whoa, the 3DS can do this? And you get them for finishing these StreetPass puzzles. And then also, yeah, StreetPass Quest, very, very cool as well. A small little RPG built into the system. And like, you need to have certain Miis to progress. Like, you can't break this guy's shield without a yellow Mii. So now, like, your favorite color matters. You need someone whose favorite color is yellow to overcome this guy. Or you can go around and walk around and farm play coins until you get a rental Mii. But yeah, rad. What else did we have? We didn't have the eShop. Like the eShop came later. Do you remember that? The eShop wasn't available at launch, so you couldn't like buy DSi games. You couldn't. There wasn't a virtual console. You couldn't get download games. we had the health and safety app. Oh, we had the activity log. Unironically, one of my favorite things. I love knowing that stuff. Is that weird? Like, I love reflecting on my time and being like, wow, I spent that long in that game. The Switch does it to an extent on your friends list, but it's limited. Like, this thing tells you everything. And like, when the 3DS came out, like we can act like there was nothing to play, but like Pokemon Black came out like a few weeks before the 3DS. And so I think most of us probably played that thing on our 3DS. And for a while, that was like my dominant, most played game. like a game from the last system. I just thought that was neat. Oh, notes! There was a notes thing. You can just like write down whenever you want. I thought that was cool. Like Phantom Hourglass did that on the DS, but this lets you do it in every single game. I didn't really use it for games though. I just kind of doodled useless little stuff on there. Like, all these notes were made like 10 years ago. I don't know what most of them mean anymore. I feel like we should talk about the 3DS camera. Like, this thing wasn't a regular camera. There were two rear-facing cameras that could capture images in stereoscopic 3D. Like nowadays, like your phone has like 3 cameras on this, but this isn't capturing in 4D. It's just a regular 2D camera. And I remember taking my 3DS on holiday. I think it was to Morocco, maybe? And there were like these elephants going into the ocean. I captured it in 3D. It's not a great quality camera, but the novelty of taking 3D pictures was awesome. I'd get like my Wii remote and put it towards the camera and just take a picture and have it pop out the screen. I'm sure people did horrible things with their 3D cameras. Horrible things. I think that's all the software that you could do on your 3DS on launch day. But the point of this whole video is, like, the 3DS didn't have nothing day one. It had some really cool stuff. And while a lot of it was, like, a novelty, like, you wouldn't really do AR cards or face raiders that often, it was something that would impress other people. Like, if you go to your friends or your friends come over, or you take your 3DS out with you to show them, they'd be like, oh, so what cool things can this system do? And like, you can show them, like, it can put Mario in the real world. And they'd say, whoa, that's cool. Like, it's not groundbreaking stuff, but it was something. It was something to show a leap in technology. And honestly, I was enamored by it for a while. And stuff like StreetPass never wore out its welcome. StreetPass is still, to this day, one of the coolest features of the system. So, yeah, the 3DS as a console was always full of potential. That was never lacking. And as the system's life went on, we got like badges and themes, and the internet browser got like a mini game with like Arkanoid in there. There you go, there's Alleyway 2. So yeah, I definitely agree. When the 3DS came out, it was lacking. It didn't have that must-have game to buy. But the system was always cool. Anyway, let me know your memories of the 3DS launch. Were you let down by the lack of games, or were you like, man, Doc Lewis in Excitebike? Thank you for watching, and because you watched all the way until the end, it is hot take time. And my hot take today is about Excitebike. Like, you look at that game today, and I don't think there's that many mega fans for it. Like, back in the day, yeah, because it was this cool game where you could make your own courses, and it just felt like high velocity. It wasn't like much else out there at the time. But these days, Excitebike isn't usually on the list of, like, made-up rumors and leaks for directs. Like, not that many people are predicting Excitebike. But, like, the series rocks. Like, Excitebike 64 is cool. Excite Truck and Excite Bots peak. And Excitebike World Rally on WiiWare. It was kind of like a remake of the original, but I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a great evolution of the original Excitebike. So I think the Excitebike series deserves more respect. Don't you put bad names in Excitebike's mouth? Excitebike's awesome. The entire series is awesome. And I hope one day it returns, whether it is a remaster of like Truck or Bots, or something entirely new. But Excitebike, Truck, Bots, they deserve to be respected on the same caliber as F-Zero and Wave Race. And every other racing game Nintendo's made, because Nintendo does great racing games. Far more than just Mario Kart. Although you wouldn't know it from the recent eras. See you guys later. Bye-bye.